Produced by PI Media.
In 2009, James Howells was living in Newport, Wales, when he set up a Dell laptop to mine for Bitcoin. Side note before I continue, a laptop to mine for Bitcoin. How quaint. Anyway, being the first year in its history, the currency was essentially worth nothing at the time. Howells let his machine run and, over time, ended up earning himself 7,500 Bitcoin. Today, on that laptop's little hard drive, sits $75 million worth of Howells money. The problem? In 2013, during a move, Howells lost his Bitcoin hard drive and it ended up getting thrown out. At the end of last year, he had petitioned the city of Newport to let him dig in the landfill where he believes his hard drive lies amongst 350,000 tons of the city's waste. To this day, and likely for the rest of his life, Mr. Howells will not see a penny of his $75 million. Hi, Nate Nelson here. Welcome once again to the Orbs podcast. Let's face it, blockchain is weird. I mean, decentralized technology is amazing, even in its own way beautiful, but it's not immediately intuitive to your average passerby. Software that runs over thousands of other computers, hard drives worth $75 million in coins created out of thin air. It's going to take everybody some time to get a good handle on this whole blockchain thing. Take just one example, arguably one of the most conventional apps ever created over blockchain. A name I've mentioned already this season, CryptoKitties. As a reminder, CryptoKitties is a social game where participants buy, sell, and groom colorful digi-kittens. It's the sort of game that would fit right in at the iTunes App Store. But to play CryptoKitties isn't as simple as downloading Tiny Wings or Subway Surfer. Here's Fred Wilson, a venture capitalist and CryptoKitties investor.
What you had to do to play CryptoKitties was you had to either have or go buy Ethereum. You then had to put the MetaMask extension into your Chrome browser, and then you had to move some Ethereum into MetaMask, and then you had to go to CryptoKitties' website, and it would sync with MetaMask, and then all of a sudden you could play the game. That's a lot, right?
CryptoKitties might be the closest thing blockchain has right now to a conventional app, and it's about as user-friendly as an IKEA dresser drawer. So it makes sense that the majority of people engaging with blockchain today, those working in the field, investing in crypto, or just participating in online forums, have technical backgrounds in one form or another. And you don't have to look far past your own life to know it. I bet you have some friends or associates with money in crypto, but if I asked your parents, what is Bitcoin? What are the chances they'd reply, I don't know, small pieces of coins? So today's consumer app developers in this space have a hurdle to jump. Not just to make a workable blockchain app, not just a good blockchain app, but a blockchain app that works even for people who don't know what blockchain is. How does one do that? Well, it has to begin with the underlying technology. You can't run an intuitive app over an unintuitive platform. This is Uriel Peled, co-founder of the Orbs blockchain platform.
Companies that are entering the space, they want to use decentralizations for business goals and economical reasons and compliance advantages. But what they also want is have a centralized kind of feeling using on a decentralized ecosystem. So this is how we basically build the Orbs product and architecture. And I can give several examples. One example, which is one of the main features of Orbs, is virtualization. So for example, on Ethereum, all the resources are shared, meaning that they run over the same computers all over the world. So if you run an application, then maybe another application, like CryptoKitties or any other, can come and basically suddenly take all the bandwidth and congest the network. In Orbs, we took a different approach, which is maybe newer to blockchain, but old for established infrastructure such as AWS, which is basically virtualization. So in order to solve this, we in Orbs enables each application to create a virtual blockchain in Orbs over this physical infrastructure, so that it will have its own governance, its own dedicated SLA, which is quality of service and bandwidth, and get basically the quality of service it is used to.
If we're to imagine how a blockchain for consumer apps might look, we'll have to get into the minds of consumers. How do we operate online? Why do we gravitate to the platforms that we do? What can we learn from today's leading brands, and what can blockchain offer over and above them? These are mammoth considerations that we can barely touch in the course of a 20-minute podcast episode. So, instead of trying to fit everything in, I'm going to take you through just a few examples of the sorts of challenges engineers are grappling with today. Here's one. Passwords. Doesn't seem like such a big deal, right? Tell that to James Howells. When Howells lost his $75 million, it was because he threw out a hard drive. But while his story isn't overtly about password information per se, in another sense, it is. Howells' hard drive held his Bitcoin private key, which, much like the passwords we use daily, is a string of information. Without getting too technical, let's just say that in Bitcoin, the private key is what allows Howells to spend his 7,500 coins, not unlike how a password allows you to spend your money on Venmo or post pictures to your Facebook profile. A password, as we know, allows only you access to an account you have with some service. In a decentralized platform, there's no central service provider, and the database is held publicly by everyone else in the network. So passwords naturally are a trickier thing. Here's the catch. Unlike a password to a website, private keys on platforms like Bitcoin and Ethereum are totally irretrievable. Because where would you retrieve the information from? If you forget your Build-A-Bear Workshop password, you click that Forgot Password button on their website, and you'll get an email with reset instructions. You can't just click Forgot Password in Bitcoin, though. There's no company holding onto your authentication information, no service that's going to send you an email with handy instructions. That's why this data exists on hard drives. That's why if you lose your hard drive, you lose everything. And there's no forgot hard drive button in life. People will always lose their passcode information, though. Realistically, we can't expect mainstream consumers to move to the blockchain if losing your hard drive means losing your social media account or your money. Therefore, we need a mechanism that will allow blockchain participants to retrieve their private access information without exposing such information in the process. Here is Eyal Herzog, founder of Bancor, a cryptocurrency exchange, on one approach to this problem.
It's actually pretty simple. I can appoint guardians to my accounts. They can initiate a process in which within X days, funds will be extracted from my wallet. So in case I really lost my keys, I can go and ask them to initiate that process. That is, fairly simple smart contract, and it will essentially make your peers that you trust the the bodies that can help recover your password. Now you can select more than one, and the majority rule in case of disputes. So even if one of the people you know decided to try to harm you, it wouldn't do that by himself. And if all the people that you trust join forces together to try to harm you, maybe you deserve it.
The method Eyal describes is already being implemented in the industry today, though it does still require a centralized service provider. What about a truly decentralized approach? I spoke with Oded Noam, a blockchain architect, about how future blockchain solutions are designing built-in mechanisms for retrieving private access information, mechanisms which require no third-party trust, liability, or extra cost.
So what we're working on is having the blockchain as a decentralized system be able to fall back to alternative methods of authentication, so that when users are unable to come up with their private keys, that we're able to authenticate them using other means, such as passwords, such as biometrics, such as social authentication methods, in such way that they're authenticating directly with the members of a consensus body, which is decentralized, and by authenticating with each of these members in a simple method, just as they'd authenticate with their bank if they lost their password, the blockchain as a decentralized system is capable of reissuing them their access credentials.
Blockchain.
So private keys are one example of how app developers might have to readjust how they think about basic aspects of their platforms. But ultimately, passkey information is a small and solvable problem. More meta concerns greet any business entering such a nascent industry as blockchain is today. For example, many different blockchain platforms are being built today, each with their own set of promises and shortcomings. What should a business be looking for in a decentralized infrastructure to ensure that they do right by their customers? In other words, what distinguishes a blockchain platform that can properly handle consumer applications, even of large scale? In a very broad sense, the characteristics necessary to a blockchain for business application must first be that it is workable, and then that it is attractive to both customers and established businesses. We can debate all week about what such a platform should look like. On one hand, you can imagine the next Ethereum, a radical new approach that's evangelized around the world. On the other hand, from an app developer's perspective, perhaps the best blockchain is one which intentionally draws as little attention as possible. It's a little difficult to picture, particularly in today's crypto space. It's the hot new coins, tech conference public speakers, and brand awareness campaigns that tend to make the most noise. What's easy to forget in the mess is that blockchain isn't a product, not even quite a service, but a mechanism. Perhaps blockchain can be big without being loud. What do I mean by this? Well, consider how we use apps on a fundamental level. When you're on Facebook, you're on the internet, and you know that. But you probably don't actively think about how you're using the internet. No, you're using Facebook. If anything, the moment the internet becomes most apparent in your conscious mind, say in the case of a lost Wi-Fi connection, is only due to a failure of the system. In the same sense, a blockchain for consumer application is one which works behind the curtain. It's difficult to participate in Bitcoin or Ethereum without feeling like you're using blockchain, which is part of the problem. But blockchain isn't unique in this regard. In fact, it's just like the early internet. As we moved into the 2000s, the nuts and bolts of internet technology became more and more a part of our unconscious rather than our conscious participation with network applications. That's a good thing, because for app developers, the goal is to draw attention to your app, not the platform it's running on top of. A better blockchain will have made that same jump. It might at first seem counterintuitive, but the most practical, decentralized solution for consumer app development will be the hardest to spot with the naked eye. The goal will have been met when customers don't know or don't care that their apps are running over the blockchain. Here to speak on this matter are the two co-founders of their own new blockchain platform, Tal Kol and Uriel Peled.
In the consumer space, consumers don't understand if the system is decentralized or not. Consumers don't care. Okay, if you have a 17-year-old girl using a messenger and she has tokens in this messenger, she doesn't care if these tokens are running on centralized infrastructure or decentralized infrastructure. It's irrelevant for her. She trusts a brand that she uses.
Consumers, I think, will not know whether an app runs on Orbs or on a centralized system, and I think that they won't care. It's like us using WhatsApp. I mean, we don't know what is the server's, infrastructures behind WhatsApp. So users would use, their apps as they use today, but these apps would use on the back end, a lot of their services will run on centralized infrastructure such as AWS, and their dedicated and new features and economies will run hopefully on decentralized infrastructure such as Orbs.
Ultimately, the challenges of consumer applications on blockchain mostly boil down to a single matter. Can this technology provide the same level of service app developers are used to already, while offering unique benefits that centralized providers cannot? We've already spent some time this season covering those areas which will need to improve before the wider app market properly adopts this technology. Issues such as scaling in relation to throughput and latency times, and the legal quandary of service level agreement without two objective parties. But what is it that blockchain does better? What about decentralized infrastructure is appealing enough to convince established businesses that this truly is the way of the future? We've already touched on some of what decentralized platforms offer that centralized platforms don't in previous episodes of the show. One such example is tokenization, and how tokens allow apps to create their own innovative sources of value. Like the problem of private keys and lost hard drives that open this episode, tokens are one of those odd characteristics of decentralized platforms. You can create money out of thin air? Where are these tokens stored anyway? What value do they really have? Here's Uriel Peled explaining to us just one practical example of how game developers use tokens to create cross-application value in a way you simply wouldn't dream of on iTunes.
I'll give an example. If right now I'm playing a game in Zynga, they might reward me with some points to create gamification and retention inside their game. But if you can create a token, these users are still rewarded inside the game, but they can use the token also potentially in other games or maybe even to buy something.
And Fred Wilson on how CryptoKitties made this principle work in practice.
And I think what CryptoKitties did for a lot of people who already owned Ethereum was it gave them something to do with their Ethereum that was different than trade it or hold it or watch it go up in price or watch it go down in price. So here was something where people were like, oh, look, this is actually something that, I can do with my crypto that's fun.
Really, the promise of handcrafted economies is one of the great draws of the decentralized world. The challenge of consumer app developers will now be to find even newer and more valuable means of using tokens to create seamless, engaging consumer experiences. Tal Kol again.
Tokenization allows you to create a token that is not only a piece of value that can pass around, but it can also be programmed to obey a certain set of rules. And these rules allow you to tailor custom economies, craft economies. And for companies who are struggling to monetize, creating handcrafted economies is amazing. I mean, this is something that can change the way value is distributed in a system. And using decentralization, you can finally put the user, in the center and make the user party to the value generated. So this means maybe less profits to the huge corporations, but that's okay because we want to create economies that are more fair and value that is distributed more evenly.
Let's face it. It's enough of a hurdle to try to create an engaging consumer application, let alone having to consider the ins and outs of the platform it's running on top of. The blockchain space is quickly approaching the consumer app space, though, and it's here to stay. So spending just a little extra time thinking about not just how to build your app, but how to build your app specifically to take advantage of what decentralized infrastructure can allow for is the difference between being in the middle of the pack and leading it. That'll be all for this episode. I appreciate your listenership. Email me at nate@podil.net. That's NATE@podil.net if you have any questions, concerns, or topics of interest you'd like to discuss in regards to any show we've done thus far, really. Soon to come this season, we're going to be changing up the format just a bit, getting more time with industry experts and a little less of my voice as we dive deeper into the more technical complications facing blockchain developers in 2018. You'll want to stick around for that and more next time on the Orbs podcast.
Blockchain.